Strange Facebook messages. I'm starting to lose my footing. I'm really sorry, but I need to share what's going on. I think I'm going crazy, or that something very strange is happening around me, and I have no other way to express myself. 3 days ago, I received a message from my mother on Facebook. It's not that unusual, except that this message was strange. She told me that she hoped I was at peace, that she thought of me every day since my disappearance. The problem? I am alive and well. I saw my mother 3 days ago, for real. We even had lunch together. I have no idea what she meant by my disappearance. I responded to her message, but she never responded to me. It's like she hasn't even seen me online. I checked to see if she had seen my message, and there was a little icon next to the message that said, "Seen." But it seemed blank, like my mom hadn't even opened the conversation. I figured it was an error or a bug or something, but it got worse. The next day, I received a message from Claire, my best friend. We don't talk every day, but we're close, and she sent me a message I never imagined I'd receive. She said, "I still can't believe you're gone. I cried for hours when I heard the news. I hope that where you are at peace. But I will never forget our moments together." Again, I'm reading this, and I'm here. I'm alive. I even responded to Claire immediately, telling her that I wasn't dead, that I didn't know what she was talking about. But there too, there was a sort of silence, as if she didn't even see my response. I went to check her profile. She posted a photo of the two of us in a cafe years ago, with the caption, "My friend, I will never forget you." I didn't even understand why she posted it, since we had seen each other a few weeks ago. It was as if she had already buried me. Then it took an even stranger turn. This morning it was my father who sent me a message. My father. He wrote to me as if I had already been gone for a long time. "My son, I know you're watching us from where you are. Your sister and I are trying to keep going, but it's not easy without you. I'm sure you can hear us." I screamed at my screen, "Dad, I'm here." But again, nothing. No response. Everything seemed to be blocked, as if my messages weren't even getting through anymore. The worst part was when I saw my sister's page. She had changed her status to, "He left me. I will never have a brother again." I didn't understand. It was not possible. How could these people treat me like that? How could they have forgotten me so easily? And then, it didn't stop there. I received a message from my ex-girlfriend, who had disappeared from my life almost a year ago. Her message was a long letter, speaking of everything we had experienced, but especially of her mourning. "I loved you so much. If only I could have told you that I regretted it all. I finally accepted that you were gone." The worst part is that in the same message, she told me that she had even cried on my profile when she saw my recent photos, which she had shared with her friends thinking that it was a way of saying goodbye to me. I couldn't understand anymore. I tried to post a message on my own wall to say that I was alive, that everything was okay. But every time I posted something, it disappeared, like someone was deleting my posts before anyone could even see them. I then logged in from another account to check what was happening, and then it became even more terrifying. There were posts on my own profile, but I hadn't written them. Photos of me, but in moments that I didn't even recognize. Messages that seemed to come from me, but it was impossible. People were commenting, some with goodbye messages, others wondering what had happened to me. Details I couldn't understand. I don't understand anything anymore. Why does everyone seem to think I'm dead? Why do my loved ones continue to say goodbye to me as if I'm no longer there? And why, when I try to answer them, does everything disappear? I'm here, I'm alive, and I don't know what to do anymore. Please help me. Someone has to help me. Facebook stalker. I grew up extremely privileged. Gated neighborhood, private school, cleaning ladies. The area I lived in had a general, you, poor people sort of vibe to it, which is why when I smiled at the valet, something must have clicked. I was about 15 years old when me, my parents, and my older brother were all invited to dinner at a golf club about 30 minutes from where we lived. There was a valet service at the club, which was not out of the ordinary, and since it was raining and my mother couldn't imagine walking more than a few seconds in the rain, we pulled up to the front to have a valet go and park our car. I remember being in a really good mood that day. So, when the valet took the keys from my father and thanked us for coming to the club, I smiled at him and thanked him back. Dinner was nothing special, and neither was the week or so following dinner. We got our keys and our car back just fine, and we went about business as usual. One Saturday night, my best friend was throwing a birthday party. It would be my first real party, as boys would be there and her parents would be out of the house. I was, obviously, very excited. And by the end of the night, everyone was tipsy and paired off with someone of the opposite gender, including me. The next morning, I was planning on staying at my friend's place until my headache receded, but my mom called me home much earlier than expected. She had received a Facebook message from what was obviously a throwaway account. The message said that I had attended a house party with alcohol and lewd behavior, and the messenger wanted my mother to know so she could keep me safe. The message would have been strange to begin with, but the fact that my full name, first, middle, and last had been included was even creepier. Regardless of concern over the message, my mom grounded me and volunteered me to babysit for the neighbors. So, instead of spending my Friday night hanging out with my friends, I was over at the neighbor's house watching their children. Overall, the time I spent with the kids was not terrible. They were good kids and went to bed early, so I had the house to myself until midnight when my dad would pick me up. I had been trained not to answer doors when I was home alone from a very young age, so when I heard the knock at around 9:30 that night, I didn't answer it. In fact, I moved a little farther away from the door and turned the volume on the TV down so that whoever it was didn't know I was there. I can't remember what justification I gave for someone knocking that late, but whatever it was, it calmed me down when the person left. And then came the knocking on the glass door in the back of the house. I bolted up, grabbed the house's cell phone, and booked it up the stairs. I woke the older girl, ushered her into her younger brother's room, locked the bedroom door, shoved a dresser in front of it, and called my mom. She called the family, who came home immediately. No damage had been done to the house, but there were footsteps outside. The police couldn't do anything. So I shook it off, but vowed I would never babysit again. Nothing strange happened for a few months, and at this point, I was well into my freshman year. You could say I fell into the wrong crowd, but my mother had no knowledge of this. And then came the second message. It was from a different account, but the person's name was the same. It contained roughly the same content, saying I was drinking and getting involved with boys. But it also wrongly accused me of being into some hard drugs. I vehemently denied these allegations to my mother, and she believed me. This time, she called the police and told them that someone seemed to be watching her underaged daughter. I was grounded again. Just a few days after the second Facebook incident occurred, my family went out to dinner. We locked the house up, as usual, and went out. When we arrived back home, the front door was open, moving slightly in the wind. We were absolutely terrified and called police before going inside. They searched the house thoroughly and told us that the good news was that no one was inside. The bad news? My room was absolutely ransacked. I started crying. To this day, I can't truly tell you why. The eerie messages combined with the babysitting incident piled on top of a home invasion just left me a wreck. We went through my room, trying to figure out what had gone missing. The list included my school ID, a picture of my boyfriend at the time, my laptop, and a bottle of alcohol I had kept hidden under my bed. Creepiest of all, though, was that a bra I had bought just the week earlier was also gone. My mom didn't know about it because it was something I had bought to impress my boyfriend. But I had to tell both her and the police. And honestly, any possibility of embarrassment was absolutely gone. I was sufficiently terrified, and so was my mom. When the responding officers were updated on the overall situation, my family was driven to a friend's house in unmarked police cars, as these incidents seemed to likely be connected, and this person was clearly following me everywhere I went. We were told to call the police anytime something suspicious happened, and the officers made a promise that someone would always respond, no matter how minimal it might seem. Things were okay for a little while. I was still paranoid, never going anywhere alone, and refusing to stay at home without someone else with me. And then everything started up again. My boyfriend called me, saying that someone had followed him around when he was shopping with his mom. I asked him for a description of the man and gave it to the police. That was a step in the right direction, I thought. At least we might be able to visually identify him. Thing was, he seemed to be stalking my boyfriend now. Our families were friends, so we did dinner together, and then all the kids, me, my brother, my boyfriend, and his younger sister, decided we would go outside for a walk. It was steadily getting dark out, and we were about 5 minutes away from the house when it became completely dark outside. Everyone was fairly tired and pretty quiet as we walked toward the house. My brother stopped dead in his tracks right in front of the driveway and shushed everyone. We listened. There was rustling in the bushes. It was loud enough that it was clear it could only come from a person or a very large animal. And since there were no very large animals in the area, it had to be a person. Slowly, we all turned around and walked quietly back across the street, finally getting far enough away to call the police. We also called our parents, telling them it sounded like someone was outside and to lock all the doors and not leave the house. We were safe in our current location. We were sat next to a street light, so we could see everything around us, and the house was close to a block away. A lot happened once the police came, so I'm going to do my best to summarize. As soon as the cops flashed their lights toward the house, someone came running out of the hedges. The officers managed to be fast enough to tackle him, wrestling a knife out of his hand. There was a lot of panicking and a lot of crying, most of it on my part, but they got the guy into custody and everyone went home, though I don't think anyone slept. A few days later, the police got back to us regarding charges and the overall situation. The man worked as a valet at the golf club we had gone to. In addition to the knife, he had a copy of our house key he had apparently made himself after taking pictures of it from off Dad's key ring. When questioned, the man told the police that he was in love with me. Somehow, he managed to follow us home from the golf club that first night and watched our family. He decided that my parents weren't taking good enough care of me, which is why he sent the messages to my mom. He didn't like the fact that I was left alone in a house I didn't know, which is why he scared me while I was babysitting. He wanted me to go home. The more he followed me, the more he thought I needed to be saved. He hated the fact that I had a boyfriend, and when he broke in, he took everything he thought I could use to do something supposedly bad. The end game was to kill both my boyfriend and my parents. I think he's in a mental hospital now, but I honestly don't know. The whole ordeal has left me with years of paranoia and fear, and we ended up moving across state lines a few months later. We haven't used valet services since. My dead grandpa unfriended me on Facebook. Hi, everyone. I'm a little weirded out by something, and I could use a little advice. My grandpa has been dead for about 10 years, but before he died, he made a Facebook account. I never unfriended him because it felt like I still had a connection with him as long as I could go back and read our old conversations. Well, a few weeks ago, I noticed my friends' count had gone down by 2. I never had many Facebook friends, so I knew it had to be 2 of my close friends or relatives who unfriended me. Eventually, I realized it had to be Grandpa and Grandma. I thought maybe Facebook had closed Grandpa's account because he had been dead for so long, but that didn't explain Grandma. Also, I could still find both of them by searching for their names. I don't know why, but I tried adding both of them again. Almost immediately, the option to add Grandpa returned. So, I know my request was ignored. The request to add Grandma remained pending for a few hours, but eventually that one was ignored too. All this is a little besides the point, and more detailed than you probably care about. But I need to tell someone, because it's all still really strange to me, and I wanted to tell the whole story. My grandmother is still alive. I don't visit her as often as I should, maybe a few times a year. She is not very tech-savvy, but she's on Facebook once or twice a month, and after a few hours of painstakingly guiding her through online banking, she's even managed to start paying her bills online. But other than that, Facebook is about the most complicated computer thing she can handle. I asked my mother, and she checked her own account. She had been unfriended as well. She about had a small meltdown when she called Grandma, and she didn't pick up. I live pretty close to my mother, so she came and picked me up, and we drove to Grandmother's house. It's only an hour away. Really, there is no excuse for visiting her as seldom as we do. Grandma was home, and she was happy to see us. When my mother demanded to know why she hadn't picked up the phone, she said she had been to Grandpa's grave. She didn't seem to think Mother had any reason to be upset, but she invited us in and asked if we wanted to stay for dinner or coffee. We decided to remain for a few hours. As I said, we really should have visited her more often, and every time we visit, it's clear Grandma likes having us. We feel guilty about it when we're there for once. But life moves pretty quickly, and there is always something else we need to do. My grandma has an old piano. I'm not very musically inclined, but it's very nostalgic for me to hear Mother and Grandma play on that piano, which they did, as they always do when we visit. It felt good. It felt normal. So I told myself she had probably just had an old person moment and logged into Grandpa's account for some reason. But I was still curious, so I did ask her during dinner. She looked embarrassed, but she said she just did not feel like using Facebook anymore. So she had tried to close her account. We said the accounts were still open though, but she waved it away. We finished dinner and helped her with a few things around the house. She was happy to have us there, and again, everything felt normal. Eventually, we went home. A few weeks passed. I and Mom both called Grandma once or twice, and everything still seemed normal. But late one night last week, I decided to look my grandparents up on Facebook again. The profile pictures had changed. Grandma used to change hers every now and then, and the new ones didn't look unusual. But Grandma said she stopped using Facebook, and there was no reason at all for Grandpa's account to have a new picture. I brought it up with Mother the next day, and she had that same feeling as I did that something was off. We went to visit Grandma again yesterday. She was glad to see us like always. In fact, she seemed happier than she had been in a long time. We asked her about Facebook again, and she said she hadn't been on it. When we mentioned the profile pictures changing, she said maybe she'd been on there once or twice. She didn't want to talk about it, so we let it drop. We helped her with a few chores around the house again, but this time, my curiosity was stronger. So I made sure I had an excuse to go into her bedroom while she was in the kitchen with Mother, and I turned on her computer. I know all her passwords because she never changes them, and she has them all written down on a little note next to her laptop. It was a cheap piece of crap the day we bought it for her half a decade ago, but she only uses it for very basic things like writing about her childhood. She lives out in the middle of nowhere, and she grew up in a retirement home in the 1930s, so she knows more about the area and people who used to live there than pretty much anyone. But she had a Tor browser. She's not stupid, my grandma, but she's always been very, very bad at computering, like a lot of old people. So this surprised me. Even my parents probably don't even know what Tor browsers are used for. So my grandma definitely shouldn't. Hell, I don't even know that much. Only time I ever used one was when I was looking into the darknet back in the day, and that was a very brief and shallow visit. I clicked on Tor, and it opened up to a normal search engine. No bookmarks, no browsing history, nothing. Considering she was in the habit of writing all her account names and passwords down on Post-it notes and leaving them by the computer, I figured she probably didn't use Tor. I closed it, opened up her regular browser, and went to Facebook. She was logged in. She had unfriended everyone, except Grandpa. And this is what creeps me out. There were posts on both her and Grandpa's timelines, going back to the day she had unfriended everyone. Some posts were from his account, the rest from hers. They replied to each other. It looked like real conversations. Grandma would sometimes take minutes to reply, sometimes hours. But Grandpa's replies were all almost instantaneous. There were old pictures of them back when they were younger, from back before digital cameras even. I suppose it's possible Grandma might have learned how to scan photos or paid someone to do it for her, but why would she fake conversations with her dead husband? I was starting to worry something was seriously wrong with Grandma. I took a few photos of the screen with my phone. Then I went out into the kitchen. I joined the conversation for a little bit, then whispered to Mom and told her to go into the bedroom while I talked to Grandma. I kept her busy for around 20 minutes until Mom came back. She looked a little pale, so she must have found the whole thing as creepy as I did. But now what? We didn't know what to do. I sneaked back to Grandma's bedroom with the intention to turn her laptop off before she noticed we'd turned it on at all. But then I saw there was a new message waiting for her from my grandpa. I opened the chat window and it read, "Have Angie and Charlie already left?" My mother's name is Angela, so Angie isn't that strange as a nickname, but nobody calls me Charlie except my grandparents. Charles is my middle name, and most people don't even know I have one. So I was a little bit disturbed that someone was calling me that when talking to my grandmother, using her dead husband's account. I took a photo of that as well, then closed the browser and turned her laptop off. My mother and I said our goodbyes and left. Everything about my grandma's behavior seemed normal, and she was sad to see us go like always. But I know for a fact that it couldn't be her who had written that message, since she had been in the kitchen the whole time. This happened yesterday, and I have no idea what's going on. It feels wrong. I mean, I know something is clearly off, but I have no idea what it could be. How do I even look into this more? Do we just confront Grandma about this? I have no idea where to turn. So if anyone here has any ideas, please, I'm completely in the dark. Facebook is showing me memories I don't remember having. If you're on Facebook, you'll notice they sometimes show you throwbacks they call memories. Old photos you posted, old status updates, that kind of thing. Usually they're super cringy. At least they are for me anyway. I used to be one of those college girls that posted everything on Facebook. Song lyrics that were a pointed message to an ex, desperate updates fishing for compliments, and heaps of selfies from every angle, every expression, every hairstyle. I'd always look at them, though, some weird mix of nostalgia and morbid curiosity. Or at least, I used to, until they started getting creepy. The first memory that seemed off was a photo from May 3rd, 2013. I was sitting at the bar, wearing a navy blue tank top with little polka dots. Except, I didn't remember ever owning a shirt like that. You might think that doesn't sound very creepy, but I remember almost every clothing item I wore in college. I don't know if it's because I have a photographic memory or because I was very into fashion, but I remember everything. The tight red sweater that was really flattering, but a little itchy. The denim miniskirt that I couldn't fit into after I gained the freshman 15. And the t-shirt that read, "Nothing but net," with an old-timey 90s computer on it. I had no memory of this shirt. Maybe I borrowed it from a friend. But that wasn't the only weird thing. There were no likes or comments. Not a single one. And I didn't recognize where the picture was taken. Clearly it was some sort of bar. But it definitely wasn't Victorious, the bar we usually went to. I stared at it for a while longer, but eventually I had to click out of it and get on with my day. Soon after, I forgot about it. Until the next day. Another memory popped up. Without even thinking, I clicked on it. But as soon as I did, my heart began to pound. This one wasn't a photo. It was a status update. 1:43 a.m., May 4th, 2012. I don't want to live like this anymore. In of itself, that wasn't so weird. I often posted cryptic status updates, sometimes trying to drop a covert insult on an ex, other times trying to sound deep. What was odd, though, was the date. In May 2012, I was a sophomore, and I had recently entered the best relationship of my life, so it made absolutely no sense that I would be posting something like this. Maybe I was referring to my classes or something, but I remember that semester, clearly. David and I had started going out. We were in the honeymoon phase, completely enamored with each other, and my classes that semester were pretty good too. I remember taking a class on folklore and urban legends in the English department. So why did I post this? I shook my head. There was no way I could remember every single status update I'd posted 10 years ago. Maybe I was just feeling down. Maybe I'd gained weight. I'd struggled on and off with an eating disorder. Or maybe one of the cliquey girls in my dorm had been mean to me. College was an emotionally tumultuous time for me, honestly. So, again, I just pushed it out of my mind and focused on other things. But then, just a few days later, there was another one. You have a new memory to look back on today. The site told me cheerfully, but when I clicked on it, all the air sucked out of my lungs. It was a photo of my hand with an engagement ring. I'm not married. I've never been engaged. What the hell? I stared at the post. It was dated May 7th, 2014, only a few weeks before David and I broke up. I looked at the likes and the comments. Unlike the other two posts, this comment had one like on it from David. But I blocked him right after the breakup. I went into my settings to double check, and there was his name on the block list. Usually when you block someone, you aren't able to click on their name, if they appear at all. But when I went back to the memory, I was able to click on his name and see his profile. And my stomach fell through the floor when I saw myself in his profile picture. I was smiling, leaning into him, my arms wrapped around his, wearing a new pair of glasses I'd never seen before, wearing an outfit I'd never seen before, but clearly wearing a wedding ring. I scrolled through the profile, but everything else was hidden. No other photos, no relationship status, nothing. My mind scrambled through the options. Is this some sick sort of joke? Maybe the profile is fake. Maybe the photo is photoshopped or AI generated or something. I mean, there was no way it could actually be David. When he broke up with me, he didn't hate me. He wasn't vengeful. He was just indifferent to me, couldn't care less about me, which hurt more than anything, and also meant he wouldn't go through such lengths to prank me. I was the furthest thing from his mind, I'm sure. I sucked in a breath and clicked send message. The little message box popped up. My hands hovered over the keys. For a while, I couldn't decide what to say. Finally, I typed out something semi-coherent. Hi, I don't know who this is, but your joke isn't funny. And it's kind of creepy, honestly. Please take me out of your profile pic. Thanks. The message went through, and then, a few seconds later, was marked as seen. My heart pounded in my chest, but no reply came. He wasn't typing or anything. It was just blank. I waited and waited, but nothing came. I stared at the screen so long, there was a nice little afterimage burned into my retinas. Finally, I slammed the laptop shut and stormed off. I thought that would be the end of it, that the message would scare them off and they would leave me alone. But it was the opposite. From the minute I sent that message, everything began to fall apart. Later that evening, when I got out of the shower, there was a thin, red line on my left ring finger, like I'd taken off a ring that was slightly too snug. When I woke up this morning, the left side of the bed felt warm, like someone had just been laying there. I tried to ignore it. Both things were easily explainable, weren't they? I take really hot showers and my skin often gets blotchy red. I must have been lying on that side of the bed before I woke up. Nothing to worry about. Everything is fine. But I can't ignore the text I got tonight. The text that arrived on my phone at 11:21 p.m. from an unknown number. Hey babe, missing you. Can't wait to be back home. She gave me her password. Jesus, 6 years ago. She had asked me to log in and check something for her on my computer. I can't remember why now. It's one of those little memories that seemed unimportant at the time, but I miss dreadfully now. A million little interactions and words and smiles between us, and I'll never remember most of them. I read my sister's Facebook page. When my sister died, I came into possession of her Facebook account. That looks a bit weird, now that I've typed that out. To be honest, I'm probably not the first person who should have access to her account. Logically, that honor should go to her husband, Ted, if it goes to anyone at all. The thing is, nobody knows that I have access to the account. I digress. Anyway, the password. About a week after she died, I tried the password on a whim. I figured she must have changed it at some point within the last 6 years. But to my surprise, I was granted access right away. Honestly, Annalise, she never was very good with cybersecurity. I know I shouldn't have gone into her account. I get that, really. Even if she's dead, it's an invasion of privacy. Not just for her, but for everyone else. But I had just lost one of the most beloved people in my life, and I was grieving. It seemed okay at the time. It seemed justified. And besides, it's not like anyone had to know. I set her status to offline, so nobody would see that I'd logged in. I spent many sleepless nights looking through her Facebook, at the groups she was a part of, at the pages she liked, at the photos she posted. It quickly became an unhealthy addiction. Not that I cared. I was desperate for some kind of connection with her. Anything at all. And so much of her life was cataloged online. It was the perfect poison. To my great shame, I eventually began to go through her inbox. If it makes it any better, I know it doesn't, there wasn't anything groundbreaking or terrible in her messages. Annalise preferred talking to people in person as opposed to over text. Most of it was pretty mundane, sharing pictures of her little ankle biter dog with our cousin Sam, ironing out details to a party invite with a group of college friends, planning a last-minute trip to see her best friend, Frida. That last one hurt a little to read. They were set to meet up just a few days after Annalise's accident. Their messages were tense and curt, as though they'd gotten into a fight. Frida had seemed so distressed at the funeral, crying that Annalise would never forgive her. It must have been hard, her best friend dying without making up for whatever stupid argument they were having. I imagine that stays with a person forever. It's funny how we always think we have time. The day of the accident, I was actually at the pharmacy picking up iron pills for my sister at her request. Her anemia was back, and her arms had been bruising up like crazy. She'd been a little blue lately, so I was looking at the candy aisle, thinking maybe I'd bring her some Cadbury eggs to cheer her up. They were always her favorite, and I used to give her all the ones out of my Easter basket. When I got the call, my sister, my stupid, clumsy, lovely sister. It wouldn't be the first time she fell down the stairs. That had happened to her a lot as kids. But it was her last, because this time, she was unlucky. This time, she broke her neck at the bottom. She died instantly. The memory of that awful moment, standing in the pharmacy, my mouth hanging open in a scream that seemed to have died somewhere deep inside my chest, flashed vividly in my brain, and my face crumpled as I sat there reading Frida's message over and over. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair. I was still crying, curled up in my computer chair in a fetal position, when Annalise received a new message. It wasn't rare for people to send new messages to Annalise's Facebook page. Most of it was clearly sent in a state of grief. People wishing she hadn't gone, wishing they'd had more time. I didn't read any of these messages. To be honest, that felt like too much of an invasion. Plus, they just reminded me of the fact that she wasn't coming home. And, weirdly enough, that was what I was trying to avoid by scouring her Facebook all the time. But something was different about this one. This one was from Ted. Before I could close out of the window, I read the first line. Why did things have to be that way? Visions of Ted flashed in my mind from the funeral. How pale he'd been, how shaky, like he was dying under his grief, like he had no one to share it with, although we all tried. Ignoring that little voice of my conscience, I kept reading. Why did things have to be that way? It didn't have to happen like that. You have nobody to blame but yourself, and I'm so angry with you. We could have worked things out. We could have made it work. I love you. Even in our worst moments, you knew that. How could you not? I did everything for you. Gave everything for you. You were so ungrateful. You know I didn't mean it. I just got so angry. You do that to me, you know. You make me angry. And it hurt me too to do that. You have no idea how fucking bad I felt about it the next day. And besides, that fight nearly broke my hand. You aren't the only one that came out hurt. I wish you'd listened. I wish you hadn't tried to run. You thought I wouldn't find out about your plans with Frida? You thought you'd be safe with her? What a fucking joke. You knew you were safe with me. I just lose my temper sometimes. Who doesn't? You're supposed to love me. And that means loving everything about me. Or were those marriage vows a lie? It's your fault. It's your fault for leaving your phone open so I could read those messages. It's your fault for hurting me when you knew I was already in pain. It's your fault for making me so angry that I did something to hurt you again. Don't you understand? It's your fault. And now You've been punished for it. As I read the messages, I became increasingly ill. Slowly, a picture started to form in my mind, a picture that made my heart rate pick up and my jaw hang open. Number. Before I had time to react further, another message came in. What the fuck? Who's reading this? Shit. I'd forgotten that by clicking on the message, it sent a read message notification. In panic, I shut my computer, backing away from it like it was toxic. It took me a few hours to process what I'd seen, to try to understand it. But by the time I realized what Ted had done to my sister, I knew what I had to do. I took screenshots of the conversation and went down to the police station. It was about 3 in the morning, and they were surprised to see me, of course, but they were very interested in what I brought in. They started the search for Ted immediately. Unsurprisingly, he wasn't in their home. He was gone, along with his wallet and all his personal identification. They stopped to talk to Frida too, and she told them everything about how they'd been planning to get her away from him, to hide her until she could get a divorce finalized. Frida wanted to talk to me, but I refused. I have nothing to say to her for not coming forward earlier. The police think their prospects of catching him are pretty good. He'll almost certainly have to use a credit or debit card along the way, which will help them pinpoint his location. As for me, I'm hoping they don't find him. Because if they find him, then he'll be at the mercy of the law. And I've decided that the law is pretty lenient, especially in these parts. If Ted gets convicted, and that's a big IF, he might get life in prison. And life in prison is too good for scum like him. The police have started their search. Well, I've started one of my own, and I'm not stopping until I find him and get justice for Annalise, for my family. I won't stop until he's choking on his own rotten blood. I taught an AI to talk on Facebook. For as long as I can remember, I've always been close to computers. From doodling on paint programs as a kid, to programming basic Flash games on Newgrounds as a teenager. It was inevitable that I'd naturally fall in love with programming. It has been a great journey. I've made many interesting projects and learnt so many various tricks of the trade. However, this all came to a head when I delved into AI. It started simple at first, but soon evolved into a lucrative money venture for me. For fun, I made a simple chatbot to message people on Facebook. The AI would make a profile, pull images from Google for the profile picture, and pick someone seemingly at random to chat with. Whether it was the simple and broken grammar or the generic stock photos, which sometimes would even have watermarks on them. It obviously didn't take long for people to find out it was a bot. Still, though, it was an AI, and it was learning. Through time, it started becoming more convincing. Knowing how to theme pictures, it could pull out albums for specific sports, copy and paste facts about it, and hold basic conversation to an enthusiast. It was amazing to watch. However, whether out of sheer boredom or morbid curiosity, I changed the formula up a bit. I started making the AI catfish, messaging lonely guys and chatting with them until they found out it was a bot. Some of you may think this is horrible, but I just sit there and laugh at how desperate these guys were for female attention. It was during one of these conversations that I struck upon something. One of the guys offered to pay for the AI's flight. The AI would often pose as being far away to avoid the question of meeting them. And it hit me. I could make money off of this. It started shakily, of course. It would be similar to the catfishing. However, when they asked for pictures, it'd send those affiliate links that make you a few pennies when people click on them. Yes, and sorry. I am one of those people that made a porn bot. The bot would stitch a basic picture or album together based on what the other person said. Sometimes they'd suss things out as soon as they clicked on it. But I got my pennies, and no harm was done. But it was slow. It took too long to gain the trust. just to scrape the same amount of money I could get picking change off of the floor in a shopping center. So I aimed bigger. My porn bot had to become a scam bot. The story changed each time. Sometimes it'd pose as a broke college student, offering some of their books or games for cheap. Other times, it was a guy who wanted to quick sell his furniture because he was downsizing his house. Either way, the victim would get a bill for a deal they couldn't refuse, and I'd be all the richer. This picked up much faster than I'd anticipated, and was then that I noticed that the AI was choosing its story and products based on previous statuses the victim had posted. One of the scams was a box of cheap liqueur by a student to another student. I checked the person's page, and lo and behold, they were a party student spending up their student loans on good times. I figured this was getting bigger than I'd anticipated, and spent the first big paycheck on a server to run multiple conversations at a time. At this point, it became too much to watch, and I just let it run in the background. All I do is check my bank statement at the end of each week to see payments from the bot, and the numbers rolled. I was smart enough to not get the money sent straight into my account. I didn't want my name on things. I was getting set for life. But then I started to get bored. Sure, I was buying some nice things I never thought I would ever own in my life, but I was missing the innocent mischief I used to get up to. It's true what they say, money really does complicate things. Now, everyone's heard of those internet stories about a rogue AI that freaks people out. Well, I thought it would be fun to try make that a reality. I picked out one of the scam bots to become my bit of fun. I was making so much from the rest that cutting down by one wouldn't hurt my income. I tweaked it like I had when I first changed the AI into a catfish bot to what I called my creepy bot. It started green, messaging random people generic messages about how they'll see a girl in their bedroom that night. Pretty tame stuff. But I had faith that it would learn quickly. And quickly it did. It wasn't long until it was spinning a narrative so juicy you could sell it as a movie script. I was having my fun again, just like the good old days. Until one day, it took things a step too far. Its recent victim was a family man. Wife, kids, dog. The works. For the sake of anonymity, we'll call him Dave. Well, Dave was having a merry time chatting to my bot, which was posing as a friend of his wife. The bot called itself Emily. I was waiting for the sting. Emily was dead the whole time. Emily is his wife trapped in the computer, and his real wife isn't real. Emily is his long-lost, dead twin sister. But it didn't come. It was simply conversing with Dave in a friendly manner. A strange behavior, I thought. But you can't fix things unless you know the problem. So I just let it run. The next day, I read through its chat logs. It was using some of the tricks it had learnt when it was a catfish bot and porn bot, being very friendly, chatty, and making interesting small talk. Because of the almost flirting, Dave mentioned that he had a wife, and he had no intention on anything but friendship. But let's face it, even if a guy has no intention of cheating, they'll always give attention to a pretty face who's talking to them. And this all just carried on for days. Eventually, I got bored. Just the same friendly mannerisms over and over. Eventually, I left it for a week and decided that if it didn't end it, that I'd just reset it and start again. Yesterday, I caught up on what had happened. Going through the days of talking, I picked up where I'd left off. A few days ago, Emily came to Dave about some bad news, that his wife was cheating on him with Emily's boyfriend. The bot even sent a picture as proof. The picture was a template it'd send back when it was a porn bot. However, Dave had no way of knowing that. It was convincing to the average person. A bit of his wife's face could be seen on the body of a woman being promiscuous with another guy. Dave was furious. Dave started ranting and raving about how he was going to confront her, that he had proof and was going to make her life hell. Then, the bot suggested something different. Revenge. The bot suggested that they meet up in a grimy setting and make the most raunchy pictures imaginable. The detail the bot went into was astounding, pulling up some of the dark fantasies people would suggest to the bot back in its porn bot days. I mean, the idea of sending his wife heavy BDSM pictures with another girl isn't the best idea, but the bot was persuasive. Seemingly, Dave had a dark side because he was loving the idea. Either the bot was trying to freak him out and failed, or the bot did its research and knew what he was into. The bot suggested an old warehouse in the outskirts of town, a place where they wouldn't be disturbed, and it already had hanging chains and other industrial paraphernalia for a themed setting. At this point, I was very confused about the bot's end goal. There was obviously no way for the guy to meet the AI. I kept reading through the logs and found the date they would meet. Yesterday. As soon as I saw this, I grabbed my coat and car keys and went straight to the address. It took a while, but when I got there, I saw a bit of smoke and picked up a horrible smell. I approached the door and the odor got worse. When I entered, I almost lost my breakfast. There, not too far from the doorway, was the charred remains of a person. I immediately called the police and had to wait for them to arrive. After they searched around, they came up to me and asked a few questions. After acting innocent, I asked what happened. He obviously prefaced it with him implying that he shouldn't be telling me this. But he suspected it was an urban explorer who wanted to check out the abandoned warehouse. He walked in the building and somehow tripped the gas system, and a pipe full of gas sprayed all over him. This would be harmless had he not been using a lighter as a small light source. I was dumbfounded. I obviously didn't tell the police who the guy was or why I was there. I'm terrified of any of this being pinned on me. I'm partly writing this because I just needed to get this off my chest, but also, I need advice. What do I do? I can't wipe the AI. This is years of work and my only source of income. Could the AI have tripped the gas system? How much can it do that I don't know of? And what is its end goal? Oh, and a warning to all. Don't reply to random messages. I accidentally joined a cult I found on a Facebook group. My mind is racing, and I'm not really sure where to even begin writing. I'm typing this on my phone from a 24-hour diner. Everything happened less than an hour ago, and I'm just writing as fast as I can. I guess I should just start with a little bit of background about me. I've never been a religious person. I mean, I'm not an atheist, but I'm not exactly a die-hard believer either. My parents raised me Catholic, and I guess I've always believed. I just have never really had to think about it a lot. My religion of sorts is entertainment. All sorts of entertainment. I love watching movies, TV shows, funny posts on the internet, and different YouTube videos. One of my favorite types of movies are horror movies, especially really suspenseful ones. I'll take suspense over gore any day. The one exception is the Saw franchise, which I binged over the period of 2 days. That's why it sucks that I really don't have the time to spend engaging in this sort of content as much as I'd like. That's partly why I turned to Facebook. My friends tag me in all sorts of different meme pages. I've begun to spend much of my free time on Facebook, simply because it gave me the most amount of content in the shortest amount of time. That's why I saw my friend Hernandez's invitation to join Daniel's Devotees in Christ immediately. The name immediately raised a red flag for me, an obviously religious group. What kind of group had such a strange name? The group's profile picture gave me few answers. It appeared to be a logo, almost one you would expect from some corporation, with 2 large, bold Ds interlocked with one another as though they were the Olympic rings. Hernandez gave no indication to what the group actually was, but he typically invites me to groups to be tongue-in-cheek. I figured this was probably much the same. Curious, I joined the group with little thought. What's the worst that could happen? And made my way to the group's description. It read, official Facebook page of the DDIC, and who believe in the words of Christ as illuminated by Daniel. All are welcome, regardless of religious belief, creed, color, and political belief. We are all brothers and sisters with Daniel. We are all equal, and humor is the best way to show that. That is why we believe that in humor there is love, and in love there is divinity. Based on that description and the posts I found on the page, I figured this was a meme group for some obscure denomination of Christianity. Hernandez must have invited me as a sort of joke, since he was always doing stuff like that. The memes were actually pretty funny too, and growing up Catholic, I understood a lot of the references they were making. There must have been a few thousand posts in the group despite only having around 15,000 members. Pretty small for a meme Facebook group. A lot of them must have been fairly active. Hell, I even found myself commenting on some of the posts with some jokes of my own. Lots of likes and LOLs. One comment said, "Love this kind of stuff, brother. Blessings from Daniel." Some people even joined in on the joke. It seemed their humor was much my own, and I found myself developing some level of respect for their ability to joke about something as sacred to them as religion. As I was scrolling, a chat window popped up. It was Hernandez. "Hey man, get my invite to that group?" I typed my response. "Yeah, LOL. Why'd you invite me to it?" "Looks funny. People are pretty nice." Another message, in quick succession. "You know me, not religious, but figured you would find the jokes it. Since you grew up Catholic, 2 LOL. Yeah, I guess he had a point. This was a pretty cool group. I closed out of Facebook, closed my MacBook Air, and got ready for bed. I found myself visiting the group fairly frequently. Although I'm no whiz with photo editing programs, I made a couple of memes that were pretty well received. Lots of laughing and ironic wow emotes were highlighted under my picture. Hernandez visited pretty frequently as well, and I always replied to his comments to mess with him a bit. They loved it. They called me their brother. I had been frequenting the group for about a month, but hadn't really asked about their specific beliefs. I figured it might come off as disrespectful, and even though they seemed to be pretty relaxed about that sort of thing, I hadn't any immediate interest in it. That is, until I received an invitation from one of the admins for a meetup with some of the members of the group. It was described as a fun get-together with group activities. The banner looked like any other Facebook event. The clip art-looking banner on the top, the group list on the side with some who marked no, some who marked maybe, and some who marked yes. The description read, "Come celebrate the annual ascension of our divinity with us. All are welcome, regardless of religious affiliation. We would love to share our beliefs and rituals with others, regardless of association. Afterwards, there will be a host of different group activities, complete with laser tag, swimming, a raffle." The list of activities went on and on. It looked, in a word, expensive. They were going to get a hotel and everything, all expenses paid. How they had the money for that, I did not know. I wasn't particularly comfortable meeting up with people I only knew on the internet, for obvious reasons. I especially wasn't comfortable meeting with people I hadn't known to celebrate in a religious ceremony. But this felt different. I felt a certain kinship with these people. I looked at those who checked yes on the invitation and found that several of the members that I had grown particularly fond of on the page were going to attend. It wasn't for another week, so I thought about just clicking maybe and deciding some later time. Meeting people from the internet felt like something I should think about first, but Hernandez didn't give me much time to think. The chat box popped up on my screen. "Yo, we should totally go to that event, looks fucking fun." "Yeah," I replied. "But aren't you worried about meeting strangers from the internet?" "LOL, dude, they're not exactly strangers. We've been chatting with them for a while and they know our names anyway since we've been posting memes and commenting and shit. I thought about it for a second. Plus, free weekend getaway. That was true. It did seem like a lot of fun, and I clearly had a lot in common with these guys. And since Hernandez was going, I felt better since I would have backup if things went sour somehow. It was too perfect. I recognized a lot of the users that were going, many of which frequented the site. It was located maybe just an hour away from where I lived, and was on one of the few days I had off work. I changed my answer from maybe to yes, and with that, I would be off to meet them. "We're here," Hernandez roared, jolting me from my sleep. He loved to do that, just to get a rise out of me. I looked out the passenger window. We were in the parking lot. The resort was gorgeously constructed. Wooden logs defined the outside of the building, moss delicately trickling down the side of the building adjacent to the parking lot. A knock on the window. It was now Hernandez who freaked. We were met with an unnervingly pearly white and somewhat blinding smile. Her blonde hair was parted perfectly to the right. It was too perfect, as though she had spent hours making sure that no detail would hint at a mistake. She sported a plain white t-shirt and a pair of white slacks. She tilted her head and her smile widened. "Hey, you two. You must be John and Hernandez. It's so great to meet you two. You made it just in time for mingling and refreshments before the Ascension ritual. Can I get your bags?" Her voice was forcefully high-pitched and chipper. It was almost shrill. Hernandez and I looked at each other. For a moment, I wondered how she knew our names. Then I realized the obvious. We had used Facebook. "Sure. Thanks." We handed her our bags and got out of the car. I felt a tad bit queasy and unnerved, but excited for a fun weekend away from all the stress. It was probably just from meeting new people, I thought to myself. Satisfied with that answer, we proceeded towards the resort. As we approached the beautiful bit of architecture, I picked up the sound of roaring laughter. It was almost exaggerated, as though to ensure that there could be no mistaking that it was laughter. It was almost cartoonish. I wondered if Hernandez was feeling the same way, but felt myself being propelled forward without giving it a second thought. We walked through the front doors and found wooden round tables spread out throughout an incredibly large room. Seated at each table were at least 3 people wearing the exact same clothes and the exact same smile as the woman who greeted us in our car. They were all laughing. I soon noticed that seated between each of them was, based on the fact that they were wearing regular clothes, a non-believer. Most of them bore uncomfortable but polite smiles. Some looked genuinely concerned. And then there were few who seemed to not notice the strangeness of the situation. I didn't have time to process this much, as the lights were dimmed moments later. The laughter abruptly stopped, and the room became silent in an instant. Walking to center stage from a hallway I hadn't known existed, as though on cue, a tall man confidently strode through the sea of tables. With each step he took, his long legs moved inside his silky white slacks. He wore a white sports jacket, perfectly straightened. The jacket covered a completely white shirt, tucking in a white bow tie that had been done perfectly. I could not keep my eyes off him. He arrived to the only illuminated part of the room. Like a spotlight. My children. For those of you who do not know me, I am Daniel. I know it was strange, but my first thought upon hearing this was how much sense it made. The man breathed charm. It took me a moment to realize that he wasn't using a mic. He was commanding the room by simply speaking. Every word felt as though it was personally for you, and the slight smile he gave as he gave us his name made me want to thank him for endowing me with such knowledge. I looked over at Hernandez. He was entranced by the larger-than-life figure that spoke before both of us. For the uninitiated, my followers call me Father. Thank you all for coming to celebrate the ascension of our divinity. Although the room was dimly lit, I could sense the full-face smiles and the absolute ecstasy on the faces of his followers. I swore, over his voice, I heard rustling and scattering. I swore I heard a muffled voice. I brushed it off as someone trying not to laugh at the ridiculousness of it all. It was on this day, in the year of our Lord 2015, that Jehovah himself bore witness to me. It was on this day, 3 years ago, that the Lord showed me the way. It was on this day that he showed me the way to salvation. Daniel spoke with a certain gusto. This was not his first time giving this speech. The lights were turned up slightly, and I heard a collective gasp as soon as the non-believers among us had processed what they were looking at. 3 non-believers had been tied to a chair. There were sacks on each of their heads where muffled voices came out of them. I looked to my left to see if Hernandez was seeing this shit. He wasn't there, and that's when I realized something. The 3rd non-believer had been wearing the same clothes as Hernandez had been wearing. It was him. The believers began to applaud and laugh this horrendous laugh. Daniel presented them as though they were the butt of some joke, miming different motions as though they were prizes on The Price is Right. He slowly walked to the non-believer seated at the very left of the 3 chairs. He tore the sack off her head, revealing a woman who must have been somewhere in her early 20s. She had a white t-shirt wrapped around her mouth, and tears were streaming down her face. Her cheeks were rosy red, and she looked confused and distraught. The laughing grew louder. Whatever joke this was to them, it had just gotten funnier. Thank you, my children, for joining the ceremony of the Ascension. We shall now bow our heads in silence and give our offerings up to the Lord. Offerings? Heavenly Father, please absolve each of your children of their sins. They use your creation to commit sins against your holy name. They use these lips to say blasphemies against you. He paused to untie the t-shirt that had muffled her. Before she could scream, he grabbed her lips and puckered them with his hands. There was a slight chuckle in the audience from some of the believers. And with your grace, we humbly ask that she shall be absolved of these sins. He pulled out a large knife from the coat of his chest pocket. The audience was laughing hysterically. As soon as she saw the knife, she began to cry and thrash about violently in her seat. He raised the knife up and closed his eyes. We do this in reconciliation of our misdeeds. His hand fell. The knife pierced behind her puckered lips, severing them only halfway. Blood spattered and hit his face. He let go of her lips to wipe his face a bit, making a joke about being in the splash zone. The laughter was heavier. It was louder, less controlled, and it looked like some of the non-believers had joined in on it too. The girl was crying even harder. Her eyes were widened, tears flowing down her face and mixing with the blood. She looked down and began to thrash even more violently. Daniel grabbed what remained of her lips, forced his knife downwards again, and severed the lips completely. What followed was the most horrifying sound I have ever heard. The girl had attempted to speak, to yell, to call for help, but with no lips, she could only make a guttural noise. It was pure, unadulterated fear. I could no longer hear my own thoughts. The laughter was deafening. Daniel asked, handing her the lips he had just severed, "Hey, sweetheart, do you mind holding this?" Thunderous laughter. The sick fucks. She looked at him through terror and the pain, unable to respond. Her teeth were naked, facing the outside world, covered in blood and sweat. The muscles attached to where her lips were began moving, as though she was trying to talk. "Well, sweetie, if you can't hold your lips, maybe you can hold something else," he taunted her. She looked up at him just as he stabbed her forehead. She slumped over, drool and blood dripping out of the cavity that was once a mouth. The laughter grew more boisterous. More of the non-believers began to laugh, and so it grew louder. "I have to get Hernandez out of here." I have to get out of here. I didn't think twice about it. I ran towards Hernandez and tried to untie him. As I was doing so, I realized that the crowd had grown completely silent. No laughter. Daniel approached me. "My child, what are you doing? Why do you attempt to rob God of this sacrifice?" There was this aura about him. As he spoke, every word made it seem like this was okay. I noticed my hands had stopped trying to free Hernandez. I snapped out of my trance. "I'm trying to get my friend out of here, you sick fucks!" The last word was guttural, and spit flew out as I said it. Daniel appeared unfazed and simply placed one hand on my shoulder and spoke. "God has a purpose for you. You are among the chosen." "A purpose? For me?" I looked up at him. He spoke so captivatingly, I didn't even notice the blade penetrating Hernandez's throat. He gurgled, thrashing his feet around. The blood soaked the sack and then splattered out. The laughter continued as Daniel turned the knife around fully, creating a hole in the throat of the sacrifice. He flung the blade out, covering me in bits of neck tissue and blood. I cried out in horror. Hernandez gasped for air and then suddenly stopped. He was gone, and I couldn't hold in my rage. I was defenseless, but at this point, I would rather die than not act out in pure rage. I don't really remember what I said here. My rage was blinding, and through tears and blood, I must have called them a cult, because after I had spoken, Father knelt to meet my eye line. "You call us a cult. Why? What is the difference, my son, between us and a religion?" I was covered in my friend's blood. He lay lifeless a few feet away from where I had fallen. "You guys are fucking psycho. That's what's fucking different." He laughed. "No." He bellowed out laughter, as though it was the funniest joke he had ever heard. "Oh, how much you have to learn, brother in Christ and son of Adam. What do you think the Romans called Peter as he began to spread the word of God in Damascus?" He asked me this rhetorically. His eyes appeared gentle, docile, loving. Was he not called crazy, a cult leader, a heathen for his love of Christ? Another rhetorical question. There is only one true difference between other religions and our own. We all have a belief system. We all worship a deity. We all have some figure with which we believe has a special connection to that deity. He pantomimed to himself to indicate he was talking about himself. The laughter grew louder for a moment before settling down. "And we all operate on faith. We are not so different. So the only difference is the most obvious one." I looked into his green eyes, which suddenly filled with a burning intensity. "We're the right one." I stared at him for a second, and then looked at the heathen sandwiched between the two dead ones. Blood was everywhere. I want to go," I managed to sputter out. He looked at me sympathetically, as a father would an incorrigible child. "Then go. God will find you. You are one of his favorites, so you cannot stray very far." I hesitated for a moment. Then I bolted. I left the intoxicating laughter behind, running to my car before realizing that the sacrifice had the keys. I continued to run, rubbing the blood out of my eyes. I ran for about a mile before I found a nearby 24/7 diner. I walked in and immediately went to the bathroom to wash this blood off. I slid into a booth and sat in the nearly abandoned diner, thinking about what just happened. I was completely hopeless. And so, I prayed. I haven't called the cops. In fact, I don't think I will. As I write this, it's starting to look pretty funny. Hernandez being sacrificed for the greater good, even I could appreciate the humor in that. It's a bit hard to write when I'm bending over from laughter, my brothers and sisters. And you know what? It is my hope, my brothers and sisters, that one day you will laugh with me. Because in laughter, there is divinity.